Hey, it's CC Chapman, and I'm super excited about today's episode. I met this woman while I was in South Dakota on my book tour last year, and talk about one of those magic moments when you just meet somebody and you just instantly connect. Super excited because McGirt is a senior writer at Fast Company magazine. I'm a big fan of the magazine, and I'm a big fan of her. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of her journey. And a special thank you to Amtrak, the official sponsor of Passion Hit TV for 2012. I love being able to say that. Enjoy the show.
Hello world, I'm McGirt, I'm a writer, and not to sound completely touchy-feely, but I'm most passionate about possibility in people's lives and whatever can bring that forward. For me, it's always been business and writing and storytelling, but whatever it is for you, I love it. I always wanted to be a writer. And from the time I was a child, and my mom was a very literate mom, and she gave me very advanced books at a very young age, and it just sort of sparked this love for writing and storytelling and the power of narrative. And I spent a lot of time doing a lot of other things before I became a writer, and I spent my entire 30s working my way back to my original dream, which took a lot of time and a serious cut in my earning power while I did it, but I got here. I have a funny story about how I became a writer. Part of it was a little bit market driven. Like I was already in my 30s. Didn't want to go back to school. I didn't want to get into debt. But I wanted to write something that people would actually read because I wanted to eat and live indoors, which is something I've gotten used to. So I decided I wanted to write specifically for women about money and investing and empowering their own decision making in their own lives and fueling whatever it is they wanted to do in their lives. So this was pre-Schwab and pre-E-Trade. This was before, the bubble of the 90s. And I had been an art dealer and a museum curator for 10 years, which had some writing in it, but it wasn't my voice. It was sort of a lofty voice. So I ended up joining a brokerage firm that I'd known from personal connections, specifically to get that kind of training, do their marketing, do some of their training. And the internet was sort of born around me, and I started writing there. And my contract was picked up, and I suddenly had an audience, and I worked for AOL, and then I worked for Oxygen, and the whole sort of thing blossomed from there. But it really took having a focus and the creative courage to just put my stuff out there, which was a brand new thing at the time. And even though the internet's very well developed comparatively, it's still a fairly courageous act to put yourself out there. So I encourage people to do it. So the lead answer, and the one that always goes to the headline, is follow your passions and be courageous even if you're scared. But the truth of it is that you can't do that if you don't take good care of yourself. That means to really inventory your obligations that you currently have. Do you have children? Do you have rent? Are you taking care of somebody else? You need to make sure that they're prepared for what you're going to do. And if you're not able to do it right now, that you set a plan in motion that helps you feel hopeful for when you can actually launch your plan without destroying the lives of others and the promises that you've already made, because it's not worth it. You won't get there without it. You also have to think about some really basic things. Can you meet some other obligations that you have? Can you continue to pay your bills in some way, shape, or form? Can you continue to nourish your soul? If you're not able to live your life with a certain amount of dignity, believe me, your creative spirit is going to completely go by the wayside. And if you can build that into it, so if it takes you 5 years instead of 3 years, then at least you have the spiritual and the emotional momentum to get there. The other thing is lower your expectations about how quickly you're going to be able to turn your life around. It takes longer. And the only way to really think about that is that the entire journey is the goal. It's not the end. You have to be where you are and know that everything that's happening in your life is conspiring to actually help you to become better, add a patina of experience that you can use for other things. So that's the long, slow, not exciting way, but follow your passion is a good place to start. This is me thinking. I often think of myself as the collective investment of every teacher I ever had. I was very lucky. I grew up in the public schools of Manhattan and then later on in Connecticut. And I was the repository of a tremendous amount of love and affection for people who were not paid very much. but recognized in me, no matter how quiet or shy or tweaked I was at the time, a tremendous potential. I think their attention, regardless of what they ever said to me, was the greatest gift to me. And that really meant the most. There was not a question that I had or an assignment that I did that didn't get their full attention. The fact that I was able to earn that and maintain it gave me a quiet confidence that I didn't even know I needed at the time. So to thank them always, I try to be present and pay attention to other people wherever they are in their lives and know that that is an investment in them. You know, to be able to believe in someone before they believe in themselves, like so many of the teachers I had in my life did for me. It's just a little planting of seeds of faith that I don't even need to know how it turns out to know that it's worth it. September 11th was a monumental day for everybody around the world, but for me, it cracked open something so wide that I didn't expect. Partly because I was in the process of turning myself into a writer, and my first step was kind of a snappy, snarky daily internet writer. And it was an opportunity for me to think, well, this isn't only how I want to be in the world. But I'd lost so many friends that day, and I'm a New Yorker, and I watched the sanctity and safety of my city be destroyed. And I was watching it on TV. I was in California at the time, and I had tremendous survivor's guilt, and I wanted to go home and get that spirit of grief and renewal all over me with people that I knew and that I loved. So I talked somebody I barely knew into renting a car since there were no planes, and we took a ride across country that I had sold him on the notion that it was going to be 30 days, but in fact turned out to be 6 months. That was enabled and abetted mostly by our credit cards. And we just zigzagged around the country and went every place that we'd ever been curious about or afraid of, and tried to talk to people who were as different from us as you could possibly imagine. And when you're a girl growing up in Harlem, USA, that would be, Wise River, Montana, or Baton Rouge, Louisiana. All across the country, people living their lives and doing the things that they cared about, stitched together by this artificial construct called America that suddenly meant so much to me. That 6 months on the road, as a middle-aged person, I was 39 when I did the trip, changed me in so many ways, not only as a writer but as an American. Because for the first time in my life, as a mixed-race kid whose father served in World War II in the segregated army, came home, couldn't vote, I felt like I belonged here. This is pre-Obama. This is before all of that stuff. Even Facebook had yet to be invented. So that kind of showing up connection was something that I was very happy that I did, and that I could still have a creative impulse as a mid-career person, and that I had people in my life who were willing to fan those flames. I'm eternally grateful for all of that. And if you ever get your heart broken, I strongly suggest just hit the road, because the greatest antidote for that is going to be connecting with other people.
We did the event at Churchill Downs last night.
I'll pick a living person. On the theme of America, since we were just talking about it with my road trip, I would pick the President of the United States, and I would pick the President even if it wasn't a person even if it wasn't the person that's the President today. I would sit in the office of the presidency and try to really understand how decisions are made. What are the personal dynamics behind the scenes? What is it that we're not seeing? Because today, in 2011, it doesn't seem to be making any sense at all. And I am so deeply curious about it. Not just the notion that you've got buttons at your fingertips, because he actually does have buttons at his fingertips. That's what people who met him have told me. But you are at the fulcrum of all of this information and need and power and desire and ugliness and beauty. And just to get a 24-hour snapshot of that, I think would change my perspective in so many ways. I've been really lucky at Fast Company that I've had such a great platform to write about so many topics and access to incredible people doing great things in the business world. The story that surprised me the most was one that I did not expect to, which was a profile I did of the CEO of Nike named Mark Parker. Partly because everybody thinks Phil Knight is still the CEO, and everybody thinks they know what Nike does, because everybody knows what a sneaker is. And he, in particular, was such an unusual person. He started out as a runner and a person who actually cut up and redesigned his own sneakers and came by his design a passion naturally. And he grew up alongside Nike within the company, and ultimately, after a couple of missteps from a leadership point of view, became the CEO. That story about being who you are, doing what you're good at, connecting with people along the way, developing yourself passionately, which we talk about a lot, and then ultimately being rewarded with the opportunity to shape the thing that you love the most in the world is something that a lot of people dream about but don't ever get to do. And that story, that the simple elegance of being so excellent and being so accessible really snuck up on me. So I love that story. Be willing to make a really big mistake. You know, with the exception of something that requires a bail bondsman or an attorney, putting your heart out there and slipping and falling and scraping your knee isn't the worst thing that ever happened to anybody. It's regret management. You will never regret the going for it with the true and open heart. You will always regret the risks you didn't attempt to take. And that said, there is probably a community of people around you that you either know well or don't know so well at all, who are dying for the opportunity to invest in you and to contribute to your success and to give you the feedback that you desperately need to shape your path. Use them, tap them, be generous with them in return, and you'll be a happier person whether you get what you want or not.